Hi, I'm Laura Laker and I am a journalist and the author of the UK's first road collision reporting guidelines, which apply to the media and anyone who writes about road safety and traffic collisions. So this work is sponsored by the Foundation for Integrated Transport's Alistair Hanton Memorial Fund, so thank you to them for their support. And I'm here to talk to you about getting the language right. So unfortunately, collisions are a reality of everyday life. Every day, local and national newspapers report on collisions that happen on our roads, and these are events that leave a trail of devastation, unfortunately, behind them on people's lives around the country and indeed around the world. The language we see in the newspapers is very varied. It can range from the accurate to the bizarre, and it's sometimes helpful and sometimes unhelpful. So it ranges the whole gamut of issues that we see around road collisions, from speed cameras to crashes to fatalities, and there are a lot of different takes on this. Some of the issues that we can see are the cash cow language around traffic cameras, which are designed to save lives, and then there's the absent driver language that we sometimes see, which includes things like the car deliberately drove at someone or the car hit a group of people, to the offending vehicle that we can see on the screen here, which was actually from a police force. Obviously, cars can't deliberately do things, so this is problematic, and I will explain why. So we know from research that subtle language changes can have a big impact on how we view road collisions and what their causes are and what the solutions are. We know that accident is a problematic word. Anyone who works in this field pretty much knows that accident is a word that we try not to use because most collisions are avoidable. Not only is it offensive to bereaved families or people left seriously injured, but it implies that there is nothing that we can do about crashes when in fact often there is. So this piece of research from 2019 is interesting because it showed people, subjects, one of 3 articles, and it altered the way that the news article talked about a collision between a pedestrian and a driver, and even subtle changes in the editorial patterns used in those articles had substantial effects on the readers who got to decide who was at fault and what the solutions were. Those focusing on the pedestrians wearing dark clothes at night, for example, resulted in readers blaming pedestrians, and those that obscured the driver and just mentioned a vehicle increased the blame for pedestrians too. So linking up the collision, researchers found, with wider collision patterns help readers better understand the need for and effective types of intervention to prevent those crashes in the first place. We know that accidents have been phased out from professional spheres already. Cars don't generally speed, crash or evade police on their own, and this context is really important. So on to slide 4. We know most collisions aren't accidents. Crashes on our roads kill or seriously injure someone in the UK every 20 minutes, and that level has remained static for pretty much a decade now. Apart from during the pandemic, when lockdowns reduced traffic on our roads. We tend to accept road danger. It's a cause of enormous death and serious injury and devastation to people's lives, but we know that most deaths are preventable on the roads. This is the fatal 5 that police talk about: careless driving, speeding, distracted driving, drug and drink driving, and not wearing a seatbelt. So none of these are accidents. We also know one of the side effects of this carnage on our roads is that it affects our choices of how we travel. So most people want to cycle or walk more. Most people don't feel that it's safe, and strikingly, even people who already cycle don't feel that it's safe on the roads. So language is part of the solution as much as it's part of the problem. And this is where the guidelines were born. So in 2020, so it's a couple of years ago now, we produced draft guidelines and held a public consultation. We had a pretty enormous response, actually, which we were delighted with, really helpful feedback. Much of it was supportive, some of it was constructive feedback. And from that, we produced a tranche of guidelines for people. to basically become a kind of professional reference for anyone writing about collisions, whether that's the media or whether that's professionals in the field. There's a lot of granular detail in that consultation that resulted in the guidelines. So these are all on the website, so I won't go on about them too much. But ultimately, first of all, be accurate. This is a central tenet of journalism. Be clear, say what you know and what you don't know. Secondly, avoid calling it an accident, and we know why. Most collisions are preventable. Talking about the driver, not the car, and we've seen from that research that that can have a huge impact if you say things like a car hit a pedestrian or pedestrian was hit, the only person that readers are going to focus on is the pedestrian and what they were doing wrong. And while it's important not to attribute blame early on, it's also important not to wrongly obscure the potential role of the different actors in the situation. So a lot of these are specifically for the media, but it's important for us all to be aware of them. Yeah, and this is something that we know from policing, that loss of life shouldn't be overshadowed by traffic delays, considering the family of the victim. So generalisation, this can be a problem in the media, sometimes some kind of aggravating headlines that people feel, we know from our consultation, that people feel makes them a target of anger on the roads. So yeah, these are all really important points. And yeah, I hope my little face box isn't obscuring these too much, but they are on the website, so I'll share the link at the end. And so they've been out for a couple of years. We've had broad support from the media and the world of road safety, road danger reduction. There've been a few exceptions from the media. The term accident's been defended by some newsrooms under the defence of common usage, which is that it's a term that readers, listeners understand and know about, and so therefore there's no reason not to use it because it's being used in society, which you can understand to an extent. The driver versus car issue remains. This is a problem that comes from well, various sides, but there's an issue around how it's reported in certain press releases, which we'll come to, and concerns around being seen to prematurely attribute blame, and it's just about handling that carefully, really. So we know that reported language comes from the professional sector, and so with the Foundation for Integrated Transport's element of this research, I decided to look at this, where the common usage is coming from. So in terms of getting the language right, even though professionals know certain issues around how we talk about road collisions, we're not always getting it right in the field. These police accident signs are a bit of a throwback, a bit of an artifact, but they're still being used, and they're also being used as an excuse to keep using the word accident. And we can see this BBC article, this was from 2017 actually, but you can see the picture says police accident. The journalist or the headline writer is going to feel comfortable saying accident. This is common usage. These overhead gantries, the drawing and the photograph are from national highways. They link back to the police accident signs as well. It's all a bit of a circle of, well, everyone's doing it, so we should just do it as well. Even the government, gov.uk, stopped using accident in most of its statistics and reports a couple of years ago, but there are still kind of words popping up, and again this has an impact on reinforcing this idea that accident is something that we say, even though we know that car collisions, vehicle collisions, are not accidents a lot of the time. Then you've got the absent driver, which we're still seeing a lot. I've just given one example here from gov.uk stats, the most recent ones. Vehicles exceeding the speed limit, of course, they're not doing it by themselves. I did manage to find this one headline of a man whose electric car malfunctioned and drove away without him, and the police had to drive in front of him and stop him. But I think that's the only one I've managed to find so far. For the most part, it's important to talk about drivers. So yeah, so it basically the conclusion was that we needed to start looking at professional language, and one of these professional language, where the professional language is coming from that feeds into the media, is from the emergency services, including police. And this piece of research from the US did exactly that. And it's interesting, I get, since I've produced the guidelines, which by the way were originally funded by the University of Westminster's Active Travel Academy, whose support I was also very grateful for, people now tweet me about news reports that say the car hit X or the car went out of control. And then you track back and you find that emergency services reports have been copied verbatim. And this is what researchers in the US have found as well. So they decided to work with police on their press releases, work out what language worked best for police, and then that feeds into the media and it becomes common usage. And we're able to improve language that way. So as part of this phase of work, which is going to last a year, I'm working with police and other emergency services to talk to them about their language, to analyse what they're doing already, who's taken up the guidelines officially. A couple of forces have, a couple of are using them, which is great. We have support from the National Police Chiefs Council, from Joe Shiner, who sent the guidelines out to police forces across the country, and they are meant to be using them, but things take a while to change, and so this is why we're trying to drive it during the year. So the guidelines are going to be part of, with the NPCC, this year's Christmas drink and drug driving campaign. Thanks to Joe Shiner and her team, and going to start using some of that language in that kind of campaign. So that's great. Also government bodies, just trying to iron out some of those little pockets of resistance around things like the word accident and the absent driver issue. Road safety campaigning and organisations, people like PACTS and Road Peace have been really, really supportive during this time, and they're continuing to help push this improvement in language as well, who I'm very grateful for. And then, of course, you. So whichever role you're playing, however you're communicating with the public, it's important that we all use the language that's kind of most accurately reflects what's happening on the roads and why, so that the public understand and we start to be able to tackle this very real and very large cause of harm in our society. So what happens next? Get in touch with me. I'm going to be working on this for quite a few months yet. This is the email that you can use, and that will get to me, and then this is the web address of the guidelines. So yeah, get in touch, and thank you for your time, and thank you to PACTS for hosting me virtually.